Well, here we go. Welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. It is just for woodshop owners like cabinet makers, architecture millworkers, closet companies, anyone in the business who's interested in the business of the woodshop business. If you want to work smarter and not just harder, you're in the right place. My name is Dominic Rubino, and today our guest is going to be Cian Brennan. We're going to talk about something very important: how to avoid high-risk contracts in commercial millwork. And here's why this episode is important, because when we do commercial work, the GC pushes the contract to us. When we do residential work, we push a contract to the buyer, right? It's a very different sense of the paper. And there is a saying, he who owns the paper owns the deal. And sometimes commercial contracts look and sound scary. They look and sound scary. There's nothing to say that's different. Now, you might be doing commercial work now and either losing money or leaving money on the table that you don't even know about. That would be a profit leak. And Cian is going to show us how that's fixable. Let me put today into perspective, because this show's all about thinking the big thinks, to steal a line from a Dr. Seuss book. As it stands today, you're the king of working hard, but you've tuned into this show because you want to figure out how other people are working smart in their shops. Now, I'll bet wherever you live, you have a part of town with really, really old houses, the kind of houses where each window is made up of 10 or 12 individual panes of glass. Heck, you might even make those windows. But imagine a window 4 panes high and 3 panes wide. As a whole, makes for a pretty beautiful window. What I'm going to do today with Cian is narrow your focus and help you look through one single pane of glass. And that pane of glass is strategy. Strategy. I want to show you the secrets for running your construction company, your wood shop, like a business person, not a tradesperson who's really good at multitasking. Nothing wrong with that, of course. It's just that you found this show because you're ready for the next level, right? All right. If you tuned in for the first time, you might be wondering what the show's all about. Well, if you're here, you're at that point in your business where you realize it's time to level up, and you're in the right place. The show is built to hit 3 high points for you. We're here to educate, inform, and inspire business owners in the finished wood trades. So my goal is to show you the path so that you can move from being a contractor who has a shop and a field crew and change your thinking, your approach, your mindset to one where you're a business person who just happens to run a cabinet shop. Now think about your operations right now. It doesn't matter whether you do $1 million a year or $10 million a year. You're doing a great job. A great job at being a $1 million business or a $10 million business. But that's not what you want anymore. If you've decided that now you want to be a $2, $3, or $4 million business, something has to change in your business and your operations and your mindset and your people and your process and your systems for you to get there. And well, it just turns out that's the outline for this podcast this year. On this show, you're going to hear from experts, other experts in the field, and you're going to be surprised by some of the outside guests I bring in so that you have perspective, a wider view, more panes of glass, right? See, for too long, I found our industry keeping secrets, and I'm done with it. It doesn't need to be that way. There are simple systems to help you, to show you to run this business so you can make the money you deserve and live the life you want. Those simple systems will give you quiet confidence to take this company wherever you want to get to. Now, that is a mindset shift, right? Speaking of mindset, I got a couple of dad jokes for you. Why dad jokes? Why bad jokes? Why dad jokes poorly delivered with poor timing? Because I want to get you laughing and I want to get your mind open to hear what our guest has to say. And, the only reason I thought of this is because I stepped on a rusty Lego the other day, and I'm worried I might have actually contracted Tetris. Today we're going to be talking to Cian about contracts, and you should never sign a contract with the cartoon character Wolverine because he has retractable claws. Thinking about Wolverine and his ability to kick butt, I was thinking about Chuck Norris. Did you know that Chuck Norris once kicked a horse in the chin? Yeah, its descendants are now known as giraffes. It's crazy. Almost killed that giraffe. Anyways, death, speaking of death, once had a near Chuck Norris experience. Now, you might be looking outside wondering what the weather's going to do, and I want you to keep in mind that tornadoes are actually a result of Chuck Norris punching the wind. It's true. When you're outside, it's a good time to remember as well that ghosts tell Chuck Norris stories at the campfire. Earlier I was talking about I stepped on a Lego. And I thought I might get Tetris. Well, when Chuck Norris steps on a Lego, the Lego cries. And of course, thinking about fitness, which I'm always thinking about, when Chuck Norris does a push-up, he looks at it a different way. He's actually pushing the earth down. Oh, I like that one. Listen, I host this podcast because one day I want to be your business coach. I joke around, but I'm serious as you know what. As a matter of fact, not only do I want to be your business coach, but I have a team of business coaches I've personally hand selected. I have, as you'd expect, very high expectations for the people that join my team. And I'm proud of every single one of them. So as you listen to this podcast, ask yourself if you think me and my team might be the right tool to help you get to the next level one day. Anyways, with that being said, let me go into business coach mode again right now. I'm going to challenge you. In this episode, Cian or I is going to say something. You're going to hear something. You're going to learn something. You're going to realize something you're already doing. Whatever it is, I want you to take action in the next 24 hours. And then I want you to pay attention to how that improves your business or your life. Let's get to it. Mr. Cian Brennan, how are you?
Very good, Dominic. Pleasure. Better for seeing you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, we both have our cups of coffee, hot.
Yes. Well, I have a nice, mine is consumed.
Oh, yours is already gone.
It's gone. It's gone straight down the hatchet, like the petrol, just straight into the tank.
Yeah. How many cups a day are you?
I am 2 cups of caffeinated coffee a day, and then probably 2 of decaf later in the day.
Okay. I'm at 2. And now it used to be 1, but now I'm at 2 back to back. And I think we're approaching maximum saturation.
Do you want to know something interesting that I have been trying? Nothing to do with cabinet makers, architectural millwork, but it is interesting. I have been experimenting with nicotine, right? I've just been smoking cigars and cigarettes. No, I'm joking. No, I'm not.
I was like, well, that took a turn. Okay.
No, I highly recommend it. No, but nicotine itself, and everyone does. If there's a real meme, right, about Huberman husbands, right? So Andrew Huberman's this guy on the internet. It's all about stuff you can do to improve your health and stuff. And the meme on the internet is, all the husbands love Andrew Huberman and trying to get their wives to do it, like cold plunges and all of this. But one of the things is nicotine itself is not is neuroprotective. Nicotine itself is pretty good for you by all accounts as a stimulant, right? So nicotine, caffeine, and if you can, obviously smoking is not good for you. Vaping is not good for you from all the chemicals. But you can get what's called, you can get nicotine gum, and you can get like a nicotine pouch that you put into your lip that is like a much safer transfusion of nicotine. And so if you do day 1, you do caffeine. Yeah. Day 2, you do nicotine. And day 3, you do nothing. And then you rotate that. That is a good way to cycle different stimulants to stay that you don't get used to them, and also keep you flying. I found nicotine to be very, very good.
Okay. Cian, you just make me feel like Joe Rogan, because we're talking about all the health benefits of these different things. I mean, obviously you're a healthy guy. I try to take care of myself as well. And all of the mill workers and cabinet makers are listening to this show thinking, what did I just tune into here? But but I do have to say, what I think is you're very open-minded. You're looking, when people talk about hacking, like health hacking, body hacking, business hacking, that's really what you and I are going to be talking about today, because our topic is how to avoid high-risk contracts in commercial millwork, which is going to take a little bit of a different way of thinking about things. Agreed?
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you letting me know that. I've still got to get my head wrapped around the nicotine thing, I'll admit. But you made me feel like Joe Rogan, so now I think you're awesome.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Career change, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I'm already doing podcasts. I just now have to take up jiu-jitsu and a career in comedy. I'm a far way off.
And commentary as well.
Oh, and commentary of the greatest sport ever. Cian Brennan, who the heck are you? And how is it that you come to be speaking to all these commercial mill workers and cabinet makers and even furniture makers all over the world?
So my expertise is contracts. I'm a contracts expert. I have been in construction my whole life. My granddad owned a construction company back in Ireland years and years and years ago. And his advice to me was, don't go into sub trades, don't go into contracting, go client side. Go work with the owner. It's much safer. So I did that. I did a degree, did a master's, worked client side my whole career.
Yeah.
To the point where I could see how the insides of these companies work. And then I was the guy not approving in payments. I was the guy rejecting change orders. I was the guy saying you're not going to get that extension of time. Your delay is your own fault. That was me. I was on the dark side. I was
the bad
Darth Vader.
mojo is coming at you through the podcast right now.
Yeah, it's different perspectives now. The perspective from their side.
I know. I'm saying it from our side here as the Millwork.
Exactly. Yeah. But I know how the insides of these big companies work, and I got to the stage where I just wasn't feeling good about a lot of the stuff that was happening, and a lot of why people weren't getting paid, and how they were signing stupid contracts, to say the least, because they didn't know any better, which meant that they took on this huge amount of risk, and if something happened, they'd go out of business, and just people would just drop them like flies. And so started Quantum Contract Solutions to help contractors avoid signing stupid contracts, to be honest, and how to get change orders and EOTs approved so that their cash flow is better, how to avoid disputes so they don't lose money in the first place. And ultimately what that does is it allows you, from a risk reduction point of view, allows you to stay in business longer. The most successful companies in construction are the people that stay in business the longest, right? So it's not about getting a business, it's about staying in business. Boosting your cash flow to make sure that your cash flow is good while you're on a project. It's a huge point. And then obviously avoiding disputes, because a dispute is a race to see who loses the least amount of money.
Yeah, disputes. And it causes a little bit of bad blood, and it's extra stress. We don't need the extra stress. We're already being pulled in a million directions. Schedules are yanking at us. Our people are pulling at us. Machinery, material costs, everything. I want to phrase this properly, but I think you'll understand where I'm going. You have an interesting accent. Probably not where you live, but for me, you have an interesting accent. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, it's an Irish accent, but it's slowed down, would you believe? I used to be a lot thicker, to the point, but I moved to Australia in 2009, and I worked, and then I moved to the Middle East in 2015. 2015. Lived in Saudi Arabia, Iraq. I lived in Qatar. And just adventure construction. Anywhere I can go that I can be on something fun has always been something I've wanted to do. I absolutely love it. So obviously the Middle East was fun. Australia was fun, and met an Australian lady, and we settled down in Australia. Business is in predominantly US side, and we've got Australia, New Zealand as well. Canada we've moved into as well. But that's it. I run it from Australia.
Very international flair. Well, and my ear can pick up that it's not Australian, so it's an Irish accent, but then you live in Australia. And you've done business all around the world. Middle East, which is its own thing. It's its own thing. And then United States, same as me. Canada, same as me. New Zealand, Australia, same. So very interesting overlay for both of us.
Yeah. So as the business, we got basically we're predominantly online, but we have people in mainly in the US, then in Australia, and so it's good to see the different markets. And the biggest learning I can say from all of them is all of the same things apply.
I'm so glad you said that. I am so glad you said that, because what people often think is it's different in Baltimore. You don't understand Boston is different. You don't understand Barrie, Ontario is different. You don't understand. I'm trying to think of a place that starts with B. Wollongong. What if I'm making up Australian place names now? Brisbane. There you go. People are laughing. Brisbane. But it's not, is it? I mean,
No,
the
it's
fundamentals are the same.
so like I mean, in the States, you've got 50 different laws, 50 different states that have 50 different laws, right? And
Yeah.
that's what people always seem to sit on and go, oh, they're all different, the laws are different, they're different. But when you sign a contract, you're bound by the terms of that contract,
Hmm.
right? Which in theory should comply with the law, but all of the contracts are almost all the same. They're all trying to do the same thing. They're trying to squeeze you on certain areas. They're trying to push risk down on different areas. And
Hmm.
so commercially, it's the same problems that happen on across the world in everything.
Right. I like how you said push the risk down. One of the things that we've seen, and it's been a trend for a long time in commercial millwork, is that more and more of the risk gets pushed to the architectural millworker. So they're doing
Yes.
buyouts of upholstery, of glass or of steel or of acoustical panels, but it's not, they're not really machining the upholstery, but they're
Mm-hmm.
responsible now for the sub trade, which
Yep.
pushes the risk and the management down to them.
Yep. I mean, let's just look at the game. I mean, I have to say, it is a game, right? Having worked with these big companies or the bigger companies, it is a game.
Hmm.
So they are what they want to push the risk onto you, right? And you don't want to play that game. You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
take all of the risk. If you just sign a contract as is, you're taking all of the risk because they're giving you their worst possible contract they could ever give you. I
Really?
promise, their worst possible one.
Okay.
They're expecting you to negotiate on a few elements of the
Okay,
contract.
let's come back to that in a bit. You're saying they expect me to negotiate.
They 100% expect
Okay.
you to negotiate. They will have backup things for every single part of the contract.
Okay.
Now, so they're playing a risk arbitrage game. Now, 15, maybe even more years ago, the PwCs, Bains, McKinsey come into the construction world and they have said, you need to, because there used to be a lot of standard contracts. No one signs standard contracts anymore. They're all amended or they're all like client specific to push the risks down. Because if something happens, we want the risk to be at this level, not at your level.
Mm.
And so typically you'd have an owner, then you'd have a GC, and then the GC would push the risk down to the subby, and then the subby would push it down to the suppliers,
Mm.
and it just goes down, 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 down. That is the game. You need to play the game is being played whether you want to play it or not. If you decide you don't want to play this game
Love it.
and you just signed a contract as is, bang, you're taking all the risk. And then if you decide I'm not going to push it down to my supplier, okay, fine, you can be the person that takes all the risk. That's what's happening. And so when something happens, you're going to be the guy that takes the fall.
I just can I tell you what I think, and I'm
Sure.
open to being wrong. I'm just going
Please.
to tell you what I've heard other people say. But Cian, you don't understand. If I don't sign their agreement because they give me the paper, if I don't sign their agreement, they're just going to go to the next guy. There's maybe 5 other mill workers in my town, and
Mm-hmm.
and all 5 of us are bidding on this job. So if I raise a stink, if I suddenly get very contractual,
Mm-hmm.
they're just going to go to the other 4 guys.
Mm-hmm. So again, having been on the other side of this argument.
Mm.
So let's just say there's a competitive bid between all 5 of you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're there's 5 mill workers in Baltimore.
Sure.
And we're going to go to all of them, right? Which is pretty. I mean, if it's a big project, maybe they do that, right?
Yeah.
And so, having been on the other side, they all, and I'm telling you, they give you their worst contract as part of the submission, part of the package. And so, if 4 people try to negotiate and you don't try to negotiate,
Mm-hmm.
an example of your terms and conditions,
Yeah.
what do you think? How do you think they're going to look at you? Are they going to look at you as, oh, this guy's easy to deal with? He hasn't tried to negotiate the contract at all. We'll give him the work. Or are they going to say, this guy hasn't a clue what he's doing? Right? It's the latter. The latter is this guy. It's a red flag. This guy hasn't tried to negotiate. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Mm.
Right? This is his first bigger project or whatever. That's how they will look at it.
Yeah. Okay. I wrote down 2 things. I wrote down a bunch of things so far, but let me just catch this for a second. So a lot of people listening have been in the millwork game for a long time. 10, 15, 20 year, maybe 2 generations, very rarely 3 generations because we haven't been around that long. They're going to say, I've been dealing with that builder for a long time. You want me to go back now? I've always accepted their contract. Things have been fine. Why would I rock the boat? So I guess the question is, can I go back to people I have an existing relationship with and start reviewing their contract?
So the construction, I mean, construction industry, and particularly if you're an older person in the construction industry, you're going to rely more on relationships. And so the belief is that if I have a good relationship with this guy, we'll be able to work anything out. I mean, and that was true a while ago. That was true.
I have to tell you, I believe that. I believe that good relationships would guide things, but you're saying that
100%. It's not that relationships are still very important, but it's changed. So the McKinseys of the world came in and they've changed contracts. The contracts are all more hostile. So you might you might have a good relationship, but you've now signed a hostile contract. That's a fact of life. If you just signed a contract, is a lot of risk on you. And so when something bad happens, they're going to end up relying on the contract. And so many of these companies have, you have a relationship, but what ends up happening is people move on. You might have a relationship with their project manager, and he moves on to the next project. It's not that relationships disintegrate, relationships go missing. People move on to another project. If they're getting to an end of one project, what are they going to do? They're going to get a job in the start of another project.
Right.
People move on, and a lot of these bigger companies have what's called a closeout team, which was something I designed for companies back in the day. You bring in a company, you bring in the new person that closes out the project, and you're like, oh, you were dealing with John? Okay, John's moved on to another project. I'm here now. I'm sorry, I know you had all these agreements with John in the past, but I can't rely on those agreements. We just have to divert to the contract.
So specifically, you did that to change the playing field, which is something I'm a huge fan of on the behalf of my customers. But change the playing field.
Yeah, and then it's a cost reduction strategy. That person goes in to try and save as much cost as possible.
Interesting.
So to come back to your original question, I've been dealing with this one guy for a long time. I'm not going to pretend that relationships, you should just go in and start super hard negotiating with this guy, right? The way you approach it is, look, we're growing as a company. We're getting a bit more sophisticated. We're getting a bit more professional. There's a couple of elements of the contracts that, we got a great relationship. There's a couple of elements of the contracts that our lawyers or that our insurance team can't let us negotiate on.
I just pointed to me. Our business coach has questions.
Our business coach said we can't do these anymore, so we need to just negotiate these 4 or 5 little things. It's not a big deal. Would you be open to that? And I'm sure they'll be fine. Okay. But let me talk about risk in general. So that you said, I've been in bed with this guy for 5-10 years, nothing's ever happened. Okay, so if we're in construction, everyone knows about safety. And so we're going to talk about risk. In contracts risk, using the example of safety risk. So the risk in safety, if you can imagine I'm drawing a chart, right? The risk is a linear, it is a straight line. The risk is the risk.
Every day, the same, right? Yeah.
It's fact. The risk is the risk. Now, the perception of risk is very different, okay? Perception of risk is a bell curve. So when you're at the start of your construction career and you're talking about, risk on site and, safety risk, you're cavalier, you run around site, you don't really care. You mightn't wear your hard hat, or you might have to be told, you don't care, you don't see the risk because you've never experienced the risk. And so your perception of risk is really low. It's lower than the actual risk. Okay. Then you understand and you get educated, and then it comes up to what the actual risk is. And you're like, okay, I understand the risk. I've seen some stuff now. I understand why stuff can happen. Then towards the end of your construction career, you're like, I've been on a construction project for my whole career, 20 years, nothing's ever happened to me. And then so your perception of the risk is lower than the actual risk. But the risk is still linear. It is factual. How you feel about the risk doesn't matter. At any stage, something could happen.
Brilliant.
And so it's about bringing the risk, the linear line, bringing that risk down. If we can bring that down, then your risk is going to be lower. And then so over time, over a longer period of time, you're going to be more successful as a construction company because the downside is protected. So all of the best investors in the world, Warren Buffett always talks about rule number one, don't lose money. Rule number two, refer to rule number one. That is more, it doesn't, is rule number one is not make loads of money and take loads of risk. And it's not that. It's let's take a moderate amount of risk to a moderate amount of upside with low risk versus let's take this huge upside with a huge amount of risk. That is not how to win the game.
I love it. So Bitcoin's out is what you're saying.
Bitcoin's
this is not a Bitcoin episode, so I'm just joking there. But yeah, I also understand, and my family is a representation of that. They were not risky. They always invested, and again, family businesses and construction. And I don't know what your take is on that, but always invested very conservatively, but over the long term with a kind of a not I want to make money tomorrow, but a long term view, and they've done very well for having that long term view.
But that's it. I mean, if you can subscribe to one strategy for a longer period of time, that's it, really. If you can stick to one thing, and then that was we did an analysis before of the most successful construction companies. So across the US, across the world, we've worked with over 250 construction companies, and we can see what like really big ones, the small ones, and who's successful and who's not. And the most successful things have three things in common. Thing number one is they've been in business for a long time.
Okay.
Thing number two is they tend to be family-run businesses, actually. Oh,
interesting.
Right? And we're talking about, sub trades. And then the last one is they do one thing. Right, which is great. And if we can talk business model for the cabinet makers and the architectural mill workers, this is great, right?
They do one thing. Really,
do one thing, right? So if we go back onto it, so staying in business a long time, right? Obviously, that makes sense. So why don't we optimize to achieve that goal, right? Instead of optimizing to scale and to get big and take risk, why don't we optimize sustain business for a long time? Because we know that will, as a correlation, we're going to get big and we're going to be more successful. So how do we optimize sustain business a long time? Reduce your risk. You got to be on top of your contracts. It's just like insurance. It's just a thing that you need to do. It's a step before insurance. It stops the stuff happening before you even get to insurance. It stops it, it literally is money in your bank account now.
Yeah. Stops the problems before they appear, which is why we do forecasting, which is why we like predictability in business or simple systems or SOPs, right?
Exactly. Family-run business. I mean, this is a fact. This is a fact. They tend to be, the name of the company tends to be, my second name is Brennan. Name of the company tends to be Brennan Cabinet Makers, right? Or whatever it happens to be. It tends to be. And why is that? Again, they're optimizing to stay in business over a longer period of time. And so they're thinking, I'm going to hand this down to my son, my daughter. I'm not taking on that stupid risky project because it's not just me relying on it. It's the whole family. And so they're taking longer term perspectives. Okay. And then what did we say? We said
do one thing.
Do one thing.
Yeah.
So all of these guys do one thing. And the one thing, when you do one thing, you concentrate on the one thing that you do, you get better at it. You get a reputation for being great at it. You only do one thing, you can get lower prices. You can optimize to be really, really good at one thing, which is going to be great. Where it's the companies that we see don't do well, there's people that start adding on ancillary services. Let me give an example for the cabinet makers. Maybe, well, we do this, but we also have to put in panes of glass here and there. So we decided to start a glass company as well. So we put in a little bit of glass in there as well. And so we're vertically integrated, right? And it's like, oh, you do a lot of stuff not very well in there. Whereas before you did one thing really, really well.
Right. So if you're an architecture millwork firm, it doesn't matter that you're doing a commercial restaurant or a law firm, you're still doing commercial millwork, and that's okay to you. Or if you're doing concrete cutting and coring, you generally do commercial work, but if somebody calls you for a residential place, you're fine with that too.
If that's your core, is you're just doing the concreting, you're just doing that's it. The one task that you're doing is definitely the way to do it. Whereas if you're I don't know, an example, if you're a roofer, And as part of our roofing, so you're, oh, well,
Oh,
because
we do
we're
windows.
in the property, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do
just
windows.
add on windows or
Or we
siding
actually
or.
started to doing a bit of property investment ourselves because we were doing so many property investments for other
Mm,
companies. So now we're a property investment company and a window company and a roofing company.
I see. Very interesting. So I like that three success factors. And you found this through your own research. You seem to be a very data driven, fact
Yep.
based guy.
Yep.
Three success factors: in business a long time.
Yep.
Number two, tend to be a family business. And
Mm-hmm.
number three, do one thing.
Do one there, family or it's like privately owned
I
business, as
was,
in, yeah,
yeah, I actually deal with lots of people who are not family business, they're partners, but they're
yep,
just like brothers
exactly, yeah,
or sometimes like cousins, but because there's,
yeah,
but
I
they
understand,
still
yeah,
operate with that same long-term mentality and they're running very successful millwork companies with that
mm-hmm.
long-term. They're not just chasing trends. They're like, look, we're here
Yeah,
for the long term. We're going to make long-term decisions. We're going to invest in our people, invest in our machinery. Yeah, interesting.
yeah.
Hey, I've got a question that's kind of, you said they're going to give you the worst contract. They're going to expect me to negotiate, but I want to take a step back for a second. One of the
Cool.
things that I'm a firm believer in this, but I'm willing to be wrong. So let me just start by saying you could totally cut me up on this one.
Okay.
When you were in procurement, when you were making the decisions, did you
Mm-hmm.
have your, let's say, commercial mill worker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have your mill worker that was your $300,000 guy? And then did you have another mill worker that was, this is our $1 million package company? And this is,
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to do a really big package, multi-location, it's going to be a $10 million pack. Maybe those numbers are wrong, but did you pigeonhole people into, they're this kind of provider? They can do a $300,000 job, but they can't do $1 million job. Then there's the $1 million guy, but he shouldn't do $5 million jobs. Did you do that?
Sometimes, yes. So what will happen oftentimes, you're trying to find the right company. So how do you find the right company? A lot of times a project manager, like I've worked with this guy before, I worked with this guy before.
Very
And so
common.
actually,
Yeah, they
yeah,
come in
it's
through a
very
PM.
common.
Yeah.
And then, or like there's a pre-qualification questionnaire that your company might have done previously, or whatever. But you're trying to get the names of the people, so that they're suggesting people, and the actual, if you're good at your job in contracts and procurement, you are not listening to that. The PM will come to you and say, "Hey, this guy is good at 500K, or this guy is terrible at that." But that might just be his experience of his last project,
Hmm.
which might be completely different. So you almost kind of have to, okay, thanks, I'll take that, and you want to run all of these guys through, a series of dials and measures to weed out the actual
Hmm.
truth. And you don't necessarily take a lot of people's perspective. You want to be able to go, okay, well, let's just go to these five guys because they're the only five, cabinet makers in Baltimore, as we said. Let's go to them. Let's run them through a technical. Like, let's see if they're technically qualified. Let's see if they got the capacity to do the work. Let's see what
Hmm.
their price is, and let's just make a decision based on the facts and the data. That's how I would like to have run it.
Right.
Um, but I mean, there might be a company that literally says we only do, like our max job is only 500K. We can't do any more. That's our capacity, and that will come out in the process.
Yeah. Did you do site tours of vendors? Like, because I know that happens where
Yep.
somebody's like, we're going
Yep.
to go see this guy before we award them a $500,000 contract to make sure they've got a shop that can produce a $500,000 contract.
Exactly. So that'd be exactly, but that'd be closer to the end. You would say on paper, you would say, yeah, I can, we can do it,
Hmm.
right? And then we go, okay, thanks for telling us on paper. We're gonna check. We're gonna come down and see if you can actually do it before we award the contract, because just to make sure, it's a lot of
Yeah.
money.
It is a lot of money. Yeah. And you want to make sure, I mean, and money is not, correct me again if I'm wrong, but money's not the only indicator because you're trying
No,
to
it's
reduce your
not.
risk. So what are the things you're looking for when you're awarding a commercial contract?
Well, typically it's going to be technically qualified lowest price. That's typically what it's going to be, right?
Hmm.
So can you do the work, and how to get labeled technically qualified? It's obviously technically, can you do the work? Have you got the capacity to do the work? Have you done the work before? And it's a series of points to understand if you're technically, can you do the work? And then we look at price after.
Right.
But one of the concerns is, it's a big concern is when you open up the price bids, Okay. And one guy is 20% lower than everybody else.
Right.
That's a red flag central. He's not priced it right. There's something wrong here. Oh, it's too low. Like it's like, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah. And so those of you who aren't seeing this as a YouTube video, I just raised my hand like a kid in the back of the class.
Yeah.
So he didn't price it right against everybody else who bid it or against our initial internal estimate.
Well, it could be the internal estimate somehow is almost useless, right? It's like, how much can I sell my house for? It's like, oh, you can sell your house for 1.5 million. You only get offers for 800 grand. The actual market decides. So how much but let's just say there's five guys, and let's just say it's roughly $1 million project. There's five guys. Four guys are like 950, 970, 105, whatever. And then one guy's 750.
Right? Don't you guys just jump on that guy?
Absolutely not. No chance. No. But he's got right. He's so much lower that there's a problem. He's not estimated right. We have to dig into this thing because there seems to be a problem. Right. And almost always is a problem. He's not, I haven't priced for this particular thing. Right. Like, oh, that's bloody 20% of the whole thing. We still need that to be done. So that happens all of the time. And so it's as much of a red flag as that. So they will think, like, if they're good at what they do, which most people are generally, if we give people a benefit of that, they're good. They don't think of how much can I get the project for. It's how much can I get the project completed for. And so
walk me through that slowly, Cian.
Okay, so it's total cost of ownership. How much is this going to cost me to get the thing done? The thing being done is priority number one. The thing being done for the cost I want it to be done is priority number two.
Okay.
It's not just about the cost. It's about everything. It's about, okay, have they got the capacity? Have they got too much work on board to do the work?
Yeah.
Have they done this type of work before? Let's see what they've done before. They've never done it before. What are the chances that I'm actually doing it?
Sure.
And so if you go with the lowest price guy and he can't do the work, he's not got the capacity to do the work, it's going to cost you way more than the most expensive guy.
Yeah, because you're going to have lost time, rework,
exactly,
headache, holdbacks,
exactly,
holdbacks on other people in schedule coming next.
Exactly. And so in the scenario with that cheapest guy, a lot of times what people will do is they'll go back to the technically qualified stuff and go, right, what's going on here? Have we missed something? Okay. And then he might be ruled out for being technically not qualified.
I gotcha. And I've been around the table when this has happened. I can't say that I condone it, but business is business, and I've heard it where builders will laugh and say, "Our only script is you're high." Yeah, it's our only script. It's all we have to do. And as soon as we say that, everybody goes running away and they come back with another price. And I mean, comment on that. What's your thought about that happening?
It's the game, right? If you've been in this game long enough and you've seen this 20, 30, 40 times before, it's the game. So I'm sure that a lot of the people listening to this podcast are of the opinion that I can't negotiate my contract. However,
right.
Yeah,
of course, I hear it as well. Cian, I hear it as well. They're like, and I think we said it, I can't negotiate because they're going to go to the other four guys.
Yeah, 100%. I get that all the time. But then, so of the 4,000 contract reviews that we've done, over 4,000, our average success rate is 82%. Now, I'm not saying that to boast or to whatever. The only reason I'm saying that is to demonstrate. So if we're getting 82% of what we try to negotiate across the line, surely there's something at play. And what's at play is there's a game. They give you their worst contract, expecting you to negotiate. You negotiate. They have backup clauses for every single one, and then that's the game.
Do they
You're
really?
Just afraid to play.
They've got a library of backup clauses. In a 62 clause contract, they've got 62 backups.
I wouldn't say there's going to be key ones. They're going to have ones that we don't move on this. Full stop.
Sure. Sorry, I apologize. I understand what you mean. They know their fallback position on any point. And some we don't fall back at all. But
if
others,
this guy comes back with this thing, we'll go back to them with this thing.
Right.
And so just by asking, you're going to reduce your risk remarkably. They're going to look at you and go, "This guy knows what he's doing. He's played this game before," and then you're more than likely to win it.
Yeah, I think I think I'd like to have you back one day to talk about change order management.
That's really, really important.
Do you see where my mind just jumped on that? Because if we track numbers like, and people on the show have heard me talk about this before, I believe in tracking numbers, because then you become the kind of company who tracks numbers, who tracks them.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But one of the numbers I like people to track is change orders per X. And it sounds like you write it down on a piece of paper and you say, okay, Dom said track change orders per X. You're likely to leave that alone on your piece of paper and never do anything with it, except that there's real power in that.
Yep.
Because if
real,
you know,
real power.
Right. Because and so allow me to make my statement and allow you to rip me apart, because I'm willing to be wrong if I can get better. If I know that on $1 million contract, I'm going to get, let's use a simple number, $220,000 in change orders. It doesn't
20%.
matter what that number is, but it's a percentage to me. And so now when I go win a job or price it accurately, I'm using air quotes, I will know that for every $1 million, I'm going to get 20 or 200 grand in change orders. Is that a number? I'll ask, is that a number worth tracking? And am I thinking the right way for maximizing contract value?
Absolutely 100% thinking the right way. So
there was a lot of stress there, man. I could have had a lot of unsubscribes on the podcast on that.
There was there's a company that sold, a CEO friend of mine from Ireland, kind of same sort of journey as me, went through the Middle East, went into Australia. They're bought by a Canadian company and for $1 billion. Just a cash Billy. And he said that we would win work at a discount because we know we can make up our margin in the post-award by proper change order management.
Wow.
And they, as a company, they spent money on, like a lot of money on contracts people, quantity surveyors, those type of people in their business to go around looking for changes. So many construction companies or like any like cabinet makers, whatever, will be asked to make a change and they'll just absorb the cost. They won't put in for a change order. They'll just absorb the cost and just take it on the head, which is basically just eating into your margin every single time.
Free work.
So whenever there's a change, and so if you're on top of these things, it makes a massive difference. Cash flow is king, not cash.
Yeah, and tracking it, and making sure that you have systems for that. It really comes down to simple systems, communication, which guys are bad at. A lot of guys are bad at communication, but at least in my estimation, change order management comes down to communication, and right up front, communicating the expectations in the agreement. You know, this is an approved change order. Yeah, right. Yeah, you've asked me to do this.
So I'm doing it. So don't give out to me for doing what you've asked me to do. If you want to take it out of the contract, absolutely no problem. But if it's in a contract, if the contract says I have to notify you within 2 days of a change, and then I had to submit a change order within 5 days, I'm going to do it. Because if I don't do it, I'm not going to pay me. And it's in my best interest to do it anyway, because my cash flow will be way better. The time, if you can minimize the time between you actually doing work and receiving money for you doing work, it just makes business pleasurable. Whereas if you have cash flow issues, if you're looking for finance to bridge the gap, all of that sort of stuff makes it miserable. If you have good, strong cash flow, construction is fantastic. And maybe we'll talk about, I'll just quickly go into it because it is a passion of mine. Structuring your business from a business model point of view is very important. And for cabinet makers, architectural millworkers, this is it's you guys got to be doing this, right? Because you guys can do it because of the type of company that you are. And so the worst thing you can do is the worst business model is I will do work on day 1 for you, and then in day 30 I will invoice for it, and then I'll wait 30 days to be paid for it. So from day 1 to day 60, right? So 30 days until I actually invoice, and then I had to wait 30 days to get paid. It's 60 days. So that's the length of time until you get money in your bank account for the work that you did on day 1. That's no good. What's the better way to do it? Well, I'll tell you, the actual ultimate best business model is insurance companies, right? Pay me right now for something I may never do.
I
right?
love it. I
So
love it.
that's
I'm going
that's
to
the
use that
ultimate.
because getting
Yeah,
paid in advance is the game.
is the game. So what do
Yeah.
the best companies do? So General Electric and Siemens. This is my example because I know and I've seen this and I've dealt and I've negotiated these contracts with these people. Is what you want to do is you want to get paid up front for as much as you can, and then downsell them to a maintenance contract. That's what we want to do. That's the
Okay.
ultimate thing that we want to do. So what General Electric, and they'll sell turbines, and you have to pay 50% for the turbine costs up front.
Hmm.
Then you'll pay in milestones as we go, and then we want to have maintenance contracts going forward.
Okay.
That's the best model that you can do for cash flow, for everything. You get paid up front. You don't have to spend any money on materials until you get the money for it. You get paid in milestones as you go through it, and then you then sell them a maintenance contract. That's what we're
Hmm.
trying to do. So how can we shoehorn what you guys do in millwork, in cabinet making to that? You want to go, right, well, um here's my product. Here's what we're going to do. You got to pay 50% up front to secure all the materials and the architectural design. Then you pay in these milestones, and then because it's such fancy stuff that we've made for you, we have to come in once every 6 months
Service
to
it.
give it, to service it, give it a good clean, because you've paid so much for it. Like, it's just going to deregulate over time, and this could last 20 years for you if you look after it. Otherwise
Right.
it mightn't last as long. Whatever your sales pitch is, but if you can or have that business model, that's going to make
Yeah.
you money.
I love that business model. For me, the recurring revenue, the maintenance aspect is
Mm.
from a business model perspective is beautiful because you can
Yeah.
build recurring cash flow. You know what you're going to be bringing in from that line of business for years. It's a
Mm-hmm.
challenge in this kind of industry where we're manufacturing, installing, and walking away.
Yep.
I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but it's a challenge.
Yeah,
And so
it
we have to
is.
find
It
other ways
is.
to do that, you know, and
You just
if you've
gotta
got
think
any
outside. There's
ideas.
a yeah. Well, we could spitball on ideas one time, but like there was a guy who was selling fur coats,
Hmm.
right? So I'm not going to go into ethics of fur coats. That's not the purpose of this discussion, right?
That's
Whatever.
okay. I'm a hunter. You can talk to me about fur coats all day long. Yeah.
Okay, right. So there's a guy selling fur coats, and guess what? In winter, he sells loads of fur coats.
Hmm.
In summer, he sells no fur coats,
Hmm.
right? So how did he overcome this problem? So in summer, he started a storage business for fur coats and a maintenance business for sports for fur coats, because they need to be looked after, otherwise they get moths and whatever.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
in winter, come in, we'll store it, and then your fur coats will last XYZ longer. And this is how you do it. I can't remember the actual benefit of doing that, but he sold it, and then he made business all year round.
Right. So the open question we have here is how can you have a recurring revenue business in architecture millwork? And obviously that's another topic. It's one that I love. Maybe we'll explore it in another episode. But the point that we're making here is get paid up front. You know
Get paid
what,
up front. Yeah.
Cian, I'm not sure if you've done this, but I do it as an exercise, and it's a really interesting one. Is when I start working with a client, we do a strategic plan, right? And I use the
Mm-hmm.
EOS model. I think everybody knows that. And one of the challenges I say is, okay, tell me your best client ever in your history. You know, they were just so delightful to deal with. They paid what you wanted to pay. They were easy to work with. Everything you manufactured was what they needed. And so somebody
Mm-hmm.
will say, well, it's great. It's the Brennan job, or it's
Mm-hmm.
Brennan General Contractors. Let's use Brennan
Mm-hmm.
General Contractors. I say, great. So tell me what was great about Brennan General Contractors. Oh, they're this, great to communicate with, great to work with, list all these things. The challenge I'll come back to them and say, and this is where people, you can see the gears start to spark, right? Because they're starting to clash in their mind, is I want you to start to think about Brennan GCs as a C plus customer.
Mm-hmm.
What would make what would be an A customer if Brennan GCs was only a C plus? And one of the
Mm-hmm.
very first definitions I encourage them to come up with is get paid in full in advance. So it's interesting that both you and I come to that same place from a totally
Yep.
different specialty in business.
It's business. It's proper business model. There's two things. One, I want to come back to what your little exercise that you do, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But what's actually happening when you get paid upfront like that? what you're doing is you have every company, whether they track these figure or not, have a cost of acquisition. Right. How much does it cost me to win work? Right. So my company has a cost of acquisition. How much do I have to pay my marketing and sales people to win work? Your company does. Everyone has a cost of acquisition. Then you also have a cost of delivery. How much does it cost me to deliver the thing? Okay. And so what we need to do is, as quickly as possible, if you have to spend 50 grand to win work, right? And then how long does it take for you to profit on that 50 grand? How long are you until you're in the green?
Right.
That's a big thing. So if we get paid up front, we liquidate the cost of acquisition straight away and we're straight into the green. Right. And that's the purpose of getting money up front. And then that helps your cash flow. As a business, you get way more money in the door, you make a lot more money, and that's what we want to do. So the second thing is, I don't know what happened, but in 2008, when the whole economy went boom, that's kind of, I emerged from that, and all me and my friend group and everyone left Ireland, and an overwhelming amount of them went into private equity. Right, like a stupid amount, right? It's like crazy. Like, what do you like? Is you all do the same thing?
Yeah.
And so what they say is, what happens, as simple as this, is when they invest in a company, they will go into the company and go, show me your top 5 clients. Who are they? And they say blah 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 blah, right? And then, okay, show me your asset. Okay, see your top 5 clients, right? Only go after those type of clients in the future. We don't want any of the rest. The top 5 clients are brought in the most revenue. Just go after that type of client, and that's our plan. Right? It's like, they're like, yeah, pretty much that's as simple as it is.
Yeah, and it's sometimes stopping or hearing us talk about it is the thing that's going to spur that action. With a mill worker right now who spends his life getting in his car or truck, driving to the shop, doing work in the shop, and coming home, and you get stuck in a silo or a vacuum where you think that's everybody's life, and you stop looking outside for new ideas.
Yep.
You and I have covered a lot of ground today. A lot
more to cover as well. I think
there is. I think we might have to revisit having you as a guest, and that's a compliment. I think you did excellent insights. But we do need to start wrapping up. So if somebody wants to find out more about you and Quantum, because your company's called Quantum, right? Cian?
Yes. Yep.
Maybe tell us, how do we find you in the world? You've got a podcast as well that people might enjoy.
Yes. So my mission is to stop trade partners, subcontractors, like cabinet makers from being bullied, pushed around, and help them come from their knees to their feet and be more profitable, make more money on their projects. And the first thing you can do is, if you just Google my name or YouTube my name or Spotify, whatever, is Cian Brennan, Cian Brennan, and you'll see the podcast, which basically the podcast or the YouTube channel goes through all of these things bit by bit by bit by bit. So just by watching, you're going to upskill yourself. On YouTube, there is a playlist called How to Negotiate Your Construction Contract. 16 videos of exactly what you need to do. It's all there. Wow. So you can go and implement it yourself. Right. Second thing that you can do is, if you want to negotiate, you can go to a lawyer. Go to a lawyer, say, hey, this is my worst contract I've ever been given. Give me a stance on where I stand as a company on each of these particular things, and then prepare a document called commercial principles. You can then attach that to your bids going forward, saying my price is based on the acceptance of these commercial principles. It'll start the conversation, and that'll work in your favor.
Brilliant.
Or you don't have time, you couldn't be bothered, and you want us to do it for you, I'd be more than happy to. And you go to quantumcontractsolutions.com and we'll help you out.
Well, which is a great solution, right? It's the I got a guy thing. You can go do it all yourself, or I could help you answer the questions, which I think is where more and more we've started to understand, and perhaps more in the commercial millwork industry than other trades. We understand having an effective sub. I mentioned upholstery earlier. We're not, just because I need an upholsterer, I'm not going to go try to be an upholsterer. I'm going to go get an upholstery company, or subbing is normal to us. It's not normal for other trades.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you just got to choose your partners wisely. Sometimes it's better to hire in-house. Sometimes it's better not to, like if you're an expert at cabinets, Do you need to be experts at law? Do you need to be an expert at accounting? You know what I mean?
No,
No,
I mean, my answer is no, you shouldn't.
no, you shouldn't.
No.
You should be an expert at what you want to be an expert at, and be the best that you can be in that area. And outsource or outsource or hire in the expertise. But oftentimes it's hard to hire in the expertise when you're small to medium sized business without breaking the bank.
Yeah. Now you mentioned, or I mentioned your podcast, but you didn't tell us the name. What's yours called?
Construction Secrets with Cian Brennan.
Oh, that's why I didn't say the name, because it's called Construction Secrets with
Yeah, so you just Google my name or put my name in there, and I'm gonna come up in some capacity, and you can go from there. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, everything. Whatever is your poison, whatever you like, you'll find me on there.
Yeah. I like to tell people, if you can't find me, you ain't looking.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I mean, and for yourself though, your first name is quite unique. So it's Cian, Cian.
Yeah, Cian. It's an Irish name. It means ancient.
Ancient Brennan.
Hmm.
Or wise. Maybe ancient means
And I'm
wise.
turning 40 in a few months as well.
Ah,
So
everybody listening's been 40 at least once.
yes,
Welcome to the club.
yes.
Cian, thanks so much for being here. I really have enjoyed this. I do like the wisdom. I really like the way you talk. And I don't mean the accent. I like the measured approach that you take, and the fact that clearly you've had these conversations before and you don't get
Hmm.
flustered by them. So when somebody comes back and says, we're not moving on that clause, I imagine that your response or your response path would be. And I really like that. Thank you.
I mean, in that particular one, it's like what you said. If you've been you put a price forward, and the last 50 times they come back and say the price is high, right? You know that that's what they say every time.
They say it every
And
time.
so he just doesn't rattle you. You don't care. He
Yeah.
doesn't rattle you. You're like, oh yeah, well, I might as well go in 20% higher because he's going to come back and say his price is high. This is like my mum at home when I was growing up. She would change the clocks in the house to be 5 minutes faster than they are. Right. But then she would counter that, be like, oh no, that's not the real time. It's still 5 minutes faster. I'm like, this is useless.
Thank you very much for joining us, Cian Brennan. We'll talk to you soon, and we're definitely going to have you back on the show. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Well, well, well. What did you learn from Cian? And what can you put in place? It is scary going back to these contracts and saying, hey, I might want to renegotiate or redline this agreement. But Cian has a way to do it. He's been doing it for years. He's been showing other people how to do it. I was actually doing research on him, and one of the thing that he showed is how to save almost $120,000 just by looking at contracts differently. And it's one of his sort of testimonials or case studies. And I appreciate it when people put those out there, because it gives us something real and tangible to say, hey, here's a company who did it. Here's what they looked like. Here's the problem they had. Here's the solution that they got to. So I think that's valuable. As a matter of fact, let's do that. Let's keep talking about problems and solutions. Here we are. It's still the beginning of the year. By the time this goes live, it's still Q1 of 2024. And you may not have had a chance to slow down and sit back and think about what you want 2024 to look like. So, I always promise to solve and simplify and solve a common problem for you. And I'm going to come back to one that you might have already heard me talk about on the show, but it is around building 2024 so that it's your best year ever. And we've had lots of people do that. There are tons of transformational stories. I'm thinking of just a wonderful gentleman up in Laconia, New Hampshire. Great guy, really nice guy. He started listening to this show when he was just had his headphones on, alone in his shop, maybe doing around 300 grand. He had to make some very tough personal decisions in his business, and I'm going to gloss right over that. And he made those decisions. And then he reached out to me, and we just talked. We just talked on the phone. Hey, how are you doing? What's up? Dom, I've got this problem. So I pointed him in a couple of directions, and to his credit, to his superhero credit, he went and did those things. Anyways, dial it forward a few years. He sends me a text message. Dom, we just crossed the $1 million mark. So when he started listening alone in his shop, he was 300 grand. And then he sends me a text out of the blue. I remember I was in the car with my wife and kids, and I'm like, oh, guys, this is great. You want to hear a great story? And they're like, yeah, sure. And so I tell them, and they're all like, oh, yeah, cool. Because they don't really know what I do or the impact of the things that we're doing in our shops all over the world. And that was great. And sometime after that, he and I decided to start working together. Well, he's now bought another building. I mean, not only has he turned his business around, his business is going gangbusters, and we're not even started, which is crazy. His attitude has always been excellent. He's got a very good work ethic, like you do. I know you do. We haven't, there's a good chance you and I have never even met. And I already know you've got a work ethic that would crush anybody else's. And the same with this gentleman here. Anyways, all that to let you know that you're on the right path if you're listening to this show or any other show. If you're listening to shows about economics, about marketing, about sales, if you're listening to podcasts about stoicism, about positive mental mindset, if you're listening to podcasts about military strategy, your mind is going in the right direction because you're trying to formulate a plan. Nothing wrong with sports podcasts, nothing wrong with comedy shows. I listen to those too. But if you've got a forward-facing mentality in your business, then you're seeking information to feed your mind. And I want to be part of that. And I'm glad to be here. So the common problem that we're going to solve right now is a lack of focus and direction that some of us feel, a lack of clarity. I don't know what to do, or it's, 2024. I had the same goal for 2023. I thought the same thing in 2020. We were talking about this back in 2015. Nothing ever changes in our company. It's time for that to end. If you decide it's time for that to end. So listen, the free download that I have for you as a tool, as a support tool to everything we've been talking about, to what Cian was just talking about, is a worksheet that's going to help you make 2024 what you want it to be. Now, the worksheet's called the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Planner. If you haven't had a chance to get it yet, just text me. My cell phone number is 315-903-7853. Now, I have to apologize. We've just had some, I'm going to say team changes. Does everybody understand what I mean when I say we've had some team changes? So we've had some team changes. So there are some of you out there who have said, hey, I texted Rubino. I never heard back. What the heck? He said he would send me the document. I apologize. My team, my current team and I are going back through the old requests and we're going to reach out to you. So that is on me. And I apologize. Remember earlier I said I'm proud of every single person on my team. If I'm no longer proud of you, you're no longer on my team. But that's how it works. Anyways, I'm just going to get off that for a second. The Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Planner is important. It's going to help you break out your worldview, like how you see your shop, how you see the cabinetry business, or maybe you're in the closet business, or very likely listening to this episode, the architectural millwork business. What do you want to be healthy, wealthy, and wise in? And we're going to cross-reference that for yourself against personal, family, and business. Now you might go, Rubino, where did you get such a cool tool? And I'll tell you, I hang out with other people who do very similar things to me. And one of the gentlemen is the host of another podcast that's just for the CEOs of large corporations. And we're very, very, very good friends. And he shared this with me. And I said, hey, can I reuse that for our audience here? So this document, this planner that you're seeing here is the same thing that CEOs of large multinational corporations use when they go on a retreat with other CEOs of large multinational corporations. I got to tell you, we're bringing out a lot of gun for the bear on this show. You may not realize it. You might think it's normal, but if you do listen around to other podcasts, you might not be getting this level of business intelligence. And I'm happy to be the one bringing it to you because I get it from some very, very powerful people and I share it with you. So anyways, it's called the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Planner. It's a simple, how many pages is this thing? 5. It's 5 pages. And there's one page that's the real workbook. By the way, if you've got a business partner who isn't on the same path as you on growth, or you're trying to get you and your business partner on the same path for growth, like they're on it, you're on it, but you have slightly different angles, this is one of those tools to do together. And what I'd suggest you do is what I tell everybody: print this thing off, go to a coffee shop, face the corner, put in your headphones, just grab a pen and start noodling around on this thing. Just scribble down your ideas. That's how it starts, right? Getting your ideas onto paper, getting everything on your head onto paper. That's where I want you to go. But then if you've got a business partner, compare notes with them. Go to Denny's 1 week later and say, hey, show me yours and I'll show you mine. And then just talk about it. That's it. You're going to find common ground. You'll be surprised. You're going to be surprised where you think you might not have common ground. Or what about a situation like I had in a call yesterday with a gentleman who's just bringing his son into his wood shop? What does his son think healthy, wealthy, and wise means? What does he think it means? Put that on the table. If this is going to be your partner, if your dream your entire life is to bring your son or your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your brother into the business, you might as well know their vision or you're going to run into conflict later, which is the opposite of having a healthy family business, right? Anyways, all that to be said, I really hope you grab this document. You'll enjoy it. And again, my apologies to those of you in the past who have reached out who have not yet heard back. That's coming. But you can text me at 315-903-7853 and just say the keywords healthy, wealthy, wise. We'll take it from there. Again, until we have a chance to have a coffee or a glass of wine across the table, this podcast is going to have to do. But I hope one day you and I have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine across the table from each other soon. Have a great day.